you're okay with. I mean, probably less than an hour is for sure the answer.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone, for joining me today. We have a very special guest from Airwatch, the chairman, Alan Dabbiere, and he is going to be talking to us about some of his prior experience and maybe answering some questions as well from the audience. So, Alan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well today. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. We know you're a busy guy, so we really appreciate an hour of your time. I guess I'll just jump right in. So I wanted to ask you about kind of when you got started as an entrepreneur. You went to IU and studied chemistry, and at that point, were you already walking down the entrepreneurial path, or were you kind of unsure what you were going to be doing?
Oh, I was pretty unsure. I was a chemistry major in order to go to medical school.
Okay.
And I ended up spending a whole bunch of time in a hospital. Unfortunately, my father got ill and had a heart attack, and I spent a year with him. And it was a real eye-opener for me to find out that's not what I wanted to do for my life. And so from there, that was my senior year in college. Mm-hmm. And that's how I kind of transitioned and ended up with a master's in finance instead of on my way to medical school.
Right. So what drew you to finance and business in general? Was there any sort of area of business that you were immediately attracted to?
Yeah, it was the idea of not working. So I just wasn't ready. I'd had 4 great years of college, and I said, man, I'm not ready yet. I've got a lot more schooling to do. So it was the most convenient second track. And the great thing about business school is it allows you to have that transition in life, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that really was probably what it was.
Definitely. So you went on to, in 1990, founded Manhattan Associates. And back then, so Manhattan Associates, for those who don't know, essentially a supply chain software company, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so software was a lot different in the 90s, especially the early 90s, than it is today. What did supply chain software mean when Manhattan Associates was started?
Well, we were in supply chain execution, which meant logistics, distribution, the movement of product, and what supply chain software meant back then was printing pick tickets. So it was the printer in the warehouse, and the warehouse would print a pile of a stack of pick. I'll try to get my hands in there, but this big stack of pick tickets, and somebody would sort them and hand them out to people to run around in a warehouse and pick the product and put it in a box and ship it to the customer. And I looked at that. I had come out of my graduate school, gotten a job with Kurt Salmon Associates, mm-hmm. and they were a consulting firm for retail and consumer goods. And I saw all of this technology that was taking place back in the order entry systems and the ERP systems and the merchandising systems. And then you would go into the warehouse and you'd see a pile of paper that got printed. And then people would run around from there. And I said, boy, there's got to be a way to automate this. And so my idea was to build the technology that finished up what the ERP was doing.
Okay.
And that's how I got into that business.
So what was it like starting that? I mean, I assume you were, you were a pretty young guy at that point, pretty fresh out of school. What were the difficulties you had starting a company kind of that early on?
Well, what really happened was starting in 1987, I started working with some developers from India. And the real idea of starting the company was to leverage India. And so I was way ahead of the curve. I mean, Infosys was really a few hundred people when this started. And having come out of a software or out of a consulting firm, I had the appreciation that every time you complete a project in consulting, you have to go back and rebid yourself. There's nothing sticky about it. And I said, man, this is a tough way to make a living. And so I knew I wanted to build software, and it really was, in 1990, you sort of think you're coming in late, but as you look at it today, you start to think you're coming in, I was maybe a little bit early in the whole scheme of software. Right. And the world was, in fact, changing. And so I had 2 or 3 different projects that related to software technology that I had worked on, and I wanted to take one of those and build it out. And again, it was the desire to get a little stickier with the customer. And so I had thought about order entry systems, and there was a product at the time called Industry Mathematique, IMI, and that would have put me dead into their space. And I started to think about that, and I said, there's not a company in the world that's going to want to risk their entire order entry system in business on 3 guys and a dog, and 2 of those guys are from India.
Right.
The second idea was MRP, and if you remember a company called I2, that's what those guys did, and this was supply chain. It was really supply chain planning was what they called it, but it was really a new name for MRP. And I had done some project work in that, and I really found out that the integration was worse than the actual product itself. There was no way to really scale it. And the third area that I had worked in was this logistics and distribution. And I found a really simple product that I could link into where the product was, the ERP was kicking out the paper, intercept that feed, and replace it with a software package, and eliminate all of that manual process that was taking place. And then the great thing was, we were doing this in retail right at the time there was a tectonic change in the retail industry. And there was an initiative called Quick Response that I had worked on. And this was the first time where an entire industry got together to collaborate. And it was the replacement of huge shipments that were going from manufacturers to retailers to scan-based and demand-based replenishment. We literally had a customer that went from 6 orders a month to replenish warehouses for Kmart to 17,000 orders a week.
Wow.
And every order needed a barcoded shipping label. And I don't care how good your people are in the warehouse, you cannot draw a barcoded shipping label. And so we found a market niche and really jumped on it. And before you knew it, within 2 or 3 years, we literally owned every supplier to retail. Wow. And so rather than going directly into warehousing, we kind of came at it at the side. And so we weren't trying to outdo the leaders in the space that we ended up dominating. We had a niche and a differentiation, and said it's not about the inventory and the management. We guaranteed compliance to the top 100 retailers. And this, you know, I always say when you start in business, you've got to find a niche that's defendable. Yep. And it's kind of like playing Risk. If you start and win Australia, you get 2 extra armies every turn. He who wins Australia wins the world. It's small, it's defendable, and you can spread out from there.
That's great. I'm really happy to hear you say that. I've been reading Crossing the Chasm. I don't know if you read that book, but about.
I lived it.
Okay,
I crossed it before it was even a book.
It sounds like you did, because what you said is exactly what they say in that book. So I'm glad to hear a second opinion on it. Okay, so as you're building Manhattan Associates, the internet comes along. And that, I mean, in software and logistics has been kind of groundbreaking. How did you see the industry change as the internet starts to come in and, you know, places like Amazon start really leveraging the internet to make their logistics systems even better?
You know, it was funny. I had a lot of employees that came to me and said, we've got to embrace this internet thing. We need graphical user interfaces. And to be honest, I think more was made out of the internet early and less was made about it late. I mean, it was truly a huge change in the way companies communicate. But I think everybody globbed onto it in the wrong areas, and it was e-commerce, and it was almost, people wanted you to change before your time because there was so much silly money that was going into it.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, it kind of hurt us because we had an established, profitable business, and everybody said, well, wait a minute, there's all these companies that are saying they're doing internet distribution. Well, you know, I'm going to hate to say it, but a company still has to have trucks and ship and do all those things. And we had competitors that were getting 20, 30, 50, $100 million in capital to go be the new, we're the internet warehouse management company.
Right.
And we had to grind all that money and, quite frankly, dumb money out of our industry. Now, the reality was, over time, every company learned to transfer information about their shipments, their products, their product designs, and supply chain visibility became a very important part. But the cart got way before the horse in enterprise technology. Everybody wanted to find something to do on the internet, whether there was something to do or not, instead of letting it take its natural course.
Yeah.
And I think we were really smart about letting our company take the natural course, and this is why in 2001, 2, and 3, we had our best years ever. You know, a lot of the internet companies and the nuclear winter that happened in technology, we completely missed. Those were some of our best years in growth because this is when enterprises, you know, the internet companies that didn't have a real business model went into the nuclear winter.
Yeah.
The companies that were watching what enterprises were doing to use the internet and providing them technology that let them take advantage of it actually did very, very well, and we were one of those fortunate companies.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to see that kind of internet age blossom and then crash down, and obviously we're kind of coming on the upswing again. You know, were those companies like hurt by the fact that investors just got a little crazy in just throwing money at them even when, you know, it didn't make any sense?
You know, they were companies that really just shouldn't have existed.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine that you were a really successful mail order company that sold shoes, and all of a sudden someone steps in and says, well, wait a minute, I just got $100 million. I'm going to sell you your product at a loss. I'm going to ship it for free. I'm going to build a bunch of warehouses, and if I get big enough, I'm going to be successful.
Right.
And that was true in software as well. We had warehouse management, e-commerce warehouse management software companies popping up all over the place that were getting a deal here and a deal there, and you know, and they didn't have to have a profit. They didn't even have to have a business model. Mm-hmm. And so I think there were a lot of real businesses that got hurt. I think there were a lot of software businesses that got hurt. And then there was the rationalization. And the companies that really shouldn't have existed at all disappeared. Some of them weathered it and found real business models.
Right.
Like I said, the ones that had real business models actually came out of it and did really, really well.
Yeah.
I think we're in a much more rational time today.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you there. So let's move on to Airwatch, because this is your big thing that you're working on now.
The new thing.
Your new thing, yeah. And I have no doubt that you'll have other new things to talk about down the road. But for Airwatch, so tell me what the company does and what you do at the company, just so that the audience has an idea.
Great. So we are the world's largest provider of the systems that secure and manage and deploy modern phone technology. So iPhones, Androids, iPads, etc. And so this can be anything from an executive or an employee that gets a corporate phone or wants to bring his own device, but really using it more as a phone with email and, of course, all the associated applications. Secondly, we do an awful lot of line of business devices. So you look at a retailer that wants to roll out mobile point of sale, or that wants a tablet as a selling tool, or at a concierge that's going to use an iPad to help assist his guest, or the airline pilot that uses an iPad for flight charts, etc. We help the largest organizations in the world deploy applications, secure and manage those devices. We've got about 2,000 customers. We are exploding as a company. And we provide a very broad platform. We do the full configuration of the device. From the time someone picks it up, they can literally go to a URL, enter a credential, hit enter, and we set up email, calendar, contacts. We turn on the Wi-Fi. We set up the VPN. We put restrictions on the device. We download all the applications. We put on all the content. We jailbreak detect it or compromise detect it. We're the app store. We're the content manager. And through the life of that device, we manage and track it. And then when an employee leaves, we've already separated the device into a consumer side and a personal side. And so if it's the individual employee's own device, we can actually just purge all of the corporate data and leave all of his family photos and personal emails and all of that. And then, of course, if it's a corporate device, we can do a full wipe on that device when the employee leaves, so it's ready for the next employee.
Right. So tell me how you kind of leverage yourself into Airwatch and mobile at all, because you know it seems like it's a little bit of a stretch from logistics. What was your transition like to get into Airwatch?
Well, not at all. I mean, I've actually been dealing with these technologies for more than 20 years. When you think about warehousing and distribution, we deployed a lot of handheld technology. Every picker in a warehouse has a handheld computer, and that's really the grandfather of the modern smartphone. And then we took it from being those handheld computers to you were handing them out to people on a Coke delivery truck or a delivery truck. So now you've got the cellular connection, you've got data going to the devices. And so I had been dealing in mobile device management for more than 20 years. And it really ended with these mobile devices. And it's really where I got the appreciation that mobile was death by 1,000 cuts. Every device needs to be secured and managed and configured and supported. The end user needs to be supported. They better get their email, or they're really, really grumpy at the end of the day. And I kiddingly say I'm so blessed to be the IT manager in my own house. And I'll tell you what, a day that my wife doesn't get her emails and I get home, it's not a very good night. You multiply that problem by 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, and let me tell you, it's a really thankless job.
Well, it seems like you've gotten into this space at the absolute perfect time, and that's probably why Airwatch has seen such success already, because smartphones weren't the thing that big companies had up until a couple of years ago, because BlackBerry was still kind of the thing. And then before that, it was maybe have a PDA and a phone. What made you kind of go full out for mobile, especially smartphones right now?
Well, I'm trying to think. I think it was Willie Horton when they asked him, why did you rob banks? And he said, that's where the money was. So we were doing mobile device management for Windows mobile devices. And I'll tell you what, it was a tough way to make a living. And we were already doing projects for people like Home Depot, where we manage more than 50,000 handhelds in their stores, and they do mobile point-of-sale transactions. But what happened was in the middle of 2010 is when Apple actually started to release the interfaces for iOS 4. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, the smartphones weren't really adopted by the enterprise until then.
Right.
And there was some occasional usage, and people would put on something like a Good Technologies or a replacement email client to try to secure a little bit of data, but it was really hit and miss. Mm-hmm. And when Apple came out with iOS 4 and made it really a manageable device, a configurable by the enterprise, securable by the enterprise, it changed the world. And so we actually deployed our first smartphone project October of 2010. You don't realize how late, or really how recently this change has taken place. And so at the end of the day, I'll kind of say, Napoleon always said he'd rather his generals were lucky than good. And we were in the right place at the right time doing enough mobile device management. Apple gave us the original version of their specifications because we were credible. We were one of the first products that came out with iOS management. I think at the time we were about 100 employees. Today we're more than 500, and by the end of this year we're suspecting we're going to be pushing close to 1,000 employees. So that's how quickly we're growing. That's awesome. So that kind of leads right into my next question, which was, what's next? Because this industry of mobile enterprise can change really quickly, and people are really concerned with security at this point. There's been a lot of articles, especially on Android, for security issues. But obviously that's something that you guys take care of. Where are you kind of looking to make sure you stay on or ahead of that curve for Airwatch? Well, we're innovating every day. Security is a cat and mouse game. Every time you get a little smarter, the bad guys get just a little bit smarter. So today we've got, we're growing as quickly as we can because it's important to be relevant. Size matters. There's going to be 1 billion of these devices in the world, and 500 million or so are going to touch an enterprise within the next 2 or 3 years. And if we're not managing 200 or 300 million of these devices, we won't be relevant. The R&D to keep up in this area is breathtaking. It's not only about iOS, but you think about Android, and then it's not about Android, because for the enterprise, you've got the 3LM version of Android, and then you've got the Samsung Safe architecture, which is Samsung approved for the enterprise. And then you've got someone else who's building interfaces on top of the 3LM version. And so you're seeing a real splintering as all the manufacturers are trying to jockey for a better position, a differentiated product, and we haven't even brought the Microsoft guys into the fold as they continue to develop for the enterprise. And so economies of scale become critical, growth becomes critical, broadening the footprint. So many of the people in mobile device management do configuration management. And I say that, compared to Maslow's pyramid, that's the food and shelter of MDM. If that's all you're doing, you're barely in the business. You're just showing up. And as you go up Maslow's pyramid, it's really about the application delivery, application security. It's about content delivery and security. It's about data loss prevention. It's about giving the enterprise the security that they feel that they are able to deploy these, let employees bring in their own, but also at the same time giving the individual consumer the feeling that they still control the device and that they can do what they need on it. Right. And let me tell you, it takes a lot of technology to be able to balance those two constituents. And so we are constantly growing our development team and innovating to make that happen.
Right. I was going to say, I mean, in the future of mobile, we're seeing a lot of people talk a lot about fragmentation among the different Android, systems. Do you see that at some point a sort of dominant mobile force in enterprise, or do you think it'll stay this kind of split up between some companies using iPhones, some using Android, some using maybe Windows phones? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the day of one operating system is over. Windows enjoyed a monopoly, and Microsoft enjoyed a monopoly for a long time. But I think the horse is out of the barn, and people want choice, and people there's variety, and so I think we're actually going to continue to see a bit of a fragmented platform. Again, different versions of Android. I wouldn't count Microsoft out yet by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that it's going to be a heterogeneous environment, and we're all about mobile choice. There are different strokes for different folks, and we think that the enterprises are embracing the heterogeneous nature, letting people consumerize and bring in their own technology as long as it's got the security that they need.
Okay, good. So my last kind of question, for people who are maybe coming out of college now or a few years out looking to get into entrepreneurship in some kind of technical field, what advice do you have for them? Should their focus be on getting more technical training, or just kind of being more creative and thinking, paying attention to the industries they like? What do you think there?
Yes and yes and yes. You've got to love what you do, number one. Being an entrepreneur is pretty darn tough. Second is good ideas are hard, but executing them is even harder. And I love the expression 90% of life is just showing up. I didn't plan to get into mobile. We actually started this business on public wireless, and it was running hotspots. We run Panera Bread's wireless network, for example. So anytime you fire up your laptop at a Panera Bread, you're on a network that we run. And from being, you don't find great ideas in conference rooms. They're out in the world. And so you start your business doing this, and then you find a little vein of gold, and then you start to follow that gold. And you don't find the start of the vein in the conference room. You find it out in the field. And so you go out and find something that you're passionate about and that you're willing to work really, really hard on, and then you keep your ears open and your eyes open. You find things that people want, and then you find what they really want. What's that niche? What is it that people haven't done yet? You don't want to go try to out-SAP. But I always say you want to be a monopoly. And I don't care if you're the best sub shop within a walking distance of an area, you've created your own monopoly. Mm-hmm. And then you can start to work off that and expand your idea. But if you can't find that one idea that you're the best in the world at, and I don't care how small it is, you've got to find that one area where you are the best, where it's a niche that you can own, you exploit it. You're constantly looking for that next niche or that way of growing it out, but if you don't get that first piece of traction, you'll never be a huge success. And this happened to me at Manhattan Associates. We really started out printing pick tickets. We identified the fact that the world was changing with quick response, and we didn't mean to go into warehouse management software. We ended up there from an idea of how to print pick tickets and then how to print barcoded shipping labels. Mm-hmm. And with Airwatch, we started out in the wireless network space, but it got us to understand that what was really the value was the endpoint, and from the endpoint was the smartphone. And again, as much as the expression, I'd rather be lucky than good, but the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and that's after reading so much of Crossing the Chasm lately, you seem to just read that book to me right now. But I guess smart people think alike, so. At this point, I want to introduce you to the rest of the guys in the audience. Mark Holmes is down at the end. We've got Denny Mew in the middle, and then Christian Reyes, and you kind of talked to Christian before. So these guys we all write for Minority Report, and we all like to be in this hangout every week, and we really thank you for coming on. Do you guys have any more questions or kind of things to talk about? Go ahead, Christian.
I'm jumping at the bit.
I know. I'm quiet.
Airwatch, in my research of the company, doing the article last month, I came very impressed with Airwatch. And one of the first things that came to mind when I was doing that research was they just beat RIM at their own game. without the hardware. You guys do everything that they provide for enterprise, what they mean for enterprise, but across all devices. The other thing that I was very impressed, and this leads to my question, is you are the only MDM company that allows small businesses, teams of 1 or 2, to be able to enjoy the same security that a large enterprise would. Where did the decision come to be able to allow the small, because obviously your business is in enterprise and large companies, but the fact that the small guy can get into MDM with a secure a secure product that
same security,
the big security that the big guys can enjoy, and also be able to do it from your website and not have to talk to a sales guy that's going to try to sell me a $15,000 appliance.
Isn't the cloud a wonderful thing?
Excellent.
The cloud is such a leveler of the playing field. And so recognizing, you know, I always say we're in mobile and we're in cloud. Double word score, man.
Yeah.
You know, you think about what Salesforce did. And Salesforce gave all the small companies equally good CRM of what Siebel was able to deliver to the big enterprises. And you know what they did? They became like a little Pac-Man. They started working their way up. And, you know, we saw that, and we said, day one, we need to be able to handle the largest companies in the world, and today we've got customers like Lowe's that are rolling out 65,000 iPhones, and we've got customers that do 20 devices. We bring the technology to the U.S. courts and the Department of Justice and companies like this, enterprises that are the highest degree of security, but we've got law firms with 20 devices. We've got customers with 5 and 10 and 15. And by being able to be multi-tenant and to be able to scale with a system that I don't have to upgrade each customer, I've got that Salesforce cloud computing model where I can bring a new customer on in minutes. I can bring the highest degree of security to everybody. And let me tell you where this even becomes more important. Software wants to be a monopoly. And, you know, if I sell a $1 billion boat build and I get a 5% margin, I'm clicking my heels. If I sell another $100 million worth of software, that immediately makes me more relevant. It goes directly into my R&D, the ability to broaden my product. My name is better. I'm more important to the manufacturers. And so the fact that I can deliver this software to both the largest companies in the world that represent about half the devices and all of the mom and pops that represent the other half of the devices, it allows me to get twice as big, twice as fast as anybody else in this market. And this is driving economies of scale where I can lower my prices and become even more relevant through market share. And it really has been a great attribute of our company.
Excellent. I think that Airwatch is quite impressive in many respects. And those, as a small business owner also of a logistics company, you know, I'm an Airwatch client. And I became a client after writing the article because I was trying to deploy a system that I could afford and not have to have an in-house appliance to provide that mobile device security. I think that for people that don't know Airwatch now, they're going to know it soon. Congratulations on that airline, on that big airline deployment that you guys signed last month.
That United is a great customer, you bet. And there's a great video on the Apple website where at the 2-minute mark they show our screen and what a great job we've done with those guys and what a great job they've done. So
you guys have been doing a lot of recruiting in a lot of colleges lately, including Georgia Tech here in Atlanta. What are you guys looking for? Young guys coming out of school right now with technical degrees, with computer sciences. You guys are planning to expand your labor force by double it basically in the next year.
Correct.
What is it that you guys are, without giving too much of any secrets, where are you guys headed? Where is Airwatch headed, and where are we going to see Airwatch next?
Well, we suspect we're going to be a much bigger company. I go back and use those numbers. When you think about 1 billion devices that need to be managed, with 500 million of them touching the enterprise, and us needing to have 100, 200, 300 million of those, we're building up data centers for our SaaS environment. We are broadening our technology again, in areas of content distribution, being able to edit and modify documents, data loss prevention on the devices themselves. Basically anything that people are doing on their devices, we need to be able to distribute the content, manage them, secure them, and give a company an all-in-one console to manage every device that they've got in their enterprise.
Yeah, well, those are all the questions that I have for right now. Give the opportunity to Danny and Mark to ask some questions if they want to.
Yeah, just one coming off that part about the data centers. You're growing out your data center network. Are you currently partnering with other providers, or is it all in-house data centers because of part of the security schema?
You know, a little of both. So we run some of our own data centers. We've got data centers in Savvis and AT&T and Level 3 and Verizon, folks like that. Where we're buying space, if you will, in a colo. We have a lot of our partners that are service providers. So Vodafone globally has white labeled our technology, and they're hosting us. So we have got a number of companies that white label our technology, and you don't know that it's Airwatch. And a lot of times they're combining it with some other technology, but they're branding it and putting it out in the marketplace. And this is really fueling our growth, especially globally.
So that allows you to scale super quickly. And then later on, if you want to bring in more proprietary data centers to cover the needs, the core needs where you need it.
Correct.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, Danny, do you have any questions?
I thought I made a comment. Alan, a Minority Report is, as Chris would like to say, just an experiment that we've been doing for the last 6 months or so. If you have a chance, check it out, and you will see that we like to write about entrepreneurship, because all of us are entrepreneurs at different stage. So the comment I'd like to make is really meant for some of our audience or readers, which is that I think most young entrepreneurs coming into entrepreneurship thinking about a technology. And then the question is, how do I make that technology into something? And I think even Carl was asking the question, how do you make the leap from doing this and to doing that? And your answer was really good in that you said it wasn't much a leap. And the reason there wasn't much a leap was that I believe your investment was made on the customers. And so for you, it was very logical. I was serving this customer, they had a problem, and now I find another problem, so I was serving them the same way that I was serving them before. And I think that's probably the lesson that I want our readers to take away today.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. The more you listen, the more you learn. And your customers are great at telling you and guiding you. And I'm a firm believer in business. It's a little bit like poker. Every hand's a winner, every hand's a loser. There is no such thing as a bad business, because businesses are meant to change and morph. And you know, if I was dealt the hand that Steve Jobs was coming back in and told, look, you've got the second best operating system in the world, you are getting pummeled by your competitors, you've got way too many products, none of them lead, this does not look like a great hand. And here's a guy that was able to take a step back and say, what are our real strengths and where do we move the company next? And I think this is true and a lesson for every company. I heard the expression where a CEO said, my God, you know, our growth isn't that great right now. We're the best house in a really bad neighborhood. Trying to say, hey, I'm a good executing company, I'm just not doing the right things. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't that your job as the CEO, to find a better neighborhood? Yeah. Change the nature of the business. That is what a CEO does, is look strategically at where do I take it next year? Not how do I farm and harness what I did last year.
Now, feeding into that, are you, I mean, you were talking about the Manhattan Associates in terms of how you had this core capability of device portfolio management and how that's basically formed the foundation of the new venture. Are you constantly looking at your own business and some internal processes and thinking, could this become a market for somebody else? How can I outsource this? How can I become the outsourced product for something? Are you constantly looking inside to see what can go outside to something new?
Well, we're doing two things. We're constantly looking at our space saying, how is somebody not going to come in and outdo us? What are the things we need to do? How do we reduce costs? People keep saying, well, gee, this is looking like it's going to be a commodity in the a commodity space to manage and secure smartphones. And my comment is, I don't like to use the word commodity. I think it's a little like Walmart. A lot of people call Walmart commodity retail, and there's nothing commodity about it. You try moving that amount of goods or build another retailer that has that size and scale. They may be low price, but they're not even close to a commodity. Our job is to drive costs down for our customers, give them better product at a lower price that becomes a de facto standard so that we can do the best for them at those lowest prices. And we do believe that that's where this market is going. But there's nothing commodity about doing something like that.
There's always going to be opportunities for the value add as well. So there's always going to be opportunities for the value add and to find new value adds that are going to enchant your customers.
Absolutely. And so the second thing we're doing is constantly looking at our fringe. What are the things that we need to be doing adjacent to what we do well? We don't want to get into them too fast, and we don't want to compete with our good partners. You've got to be very clear in a business to say what you do and what you don't. And so we don't sell hardware because hardware partners do an awful lot of business with us. We don't do managed services because the Vodafones and the Enterprise Mobiles and the Intermex and the Vox Mobiles, these are all partners that are doing managed services around our product. So there are things we do and things that we're very explicit about not doing. And that's what builds great relationships, great partnerships, but allows you to grow in areas that make really conscious sense.
I was going to ask about the Manhattan Associates because it's quite a good example of the growth of the company. You picked the niche and you targeted and you're super hyper-focused because you could see the opportunity to grow without being in a direct competitor to powerful players. Was it your intention when you first started to think about how you could move across when you gained a power base to attack them, or did you then see them as potential partners and become... So from the outset, were you looking at it as a potential to build a power base to then move aside into them, or...?
Well, it was to build a power base and move into other areas, but not against the traditional players. And so we very quickly moved into broader supply chain capabilities. We moved into transportation management systems. So we built into lots of things. What we didn't do was say, oh, well, now that we have the warehouse, let's go after the order entry people. I mean, they were there and established, and you don't want to go try to beat up somebody in their strength. There are so many great ideas and new things to move into. And again, when Steve Jobs said, our business isn't to try to out-Microsoft Microsoft, he didn't stabilize the business and say, now what I'm going to do is try to replace Microsoft and the PC as the desktop. He said, wait a minute, we've gone into music and we've done the iPod. What is the next really creative place we can take our skills? And it wasn't to double down on the desktop, it was to double down on the smartphone. And he said, here's an area where it's been custodians for too long. They need innovation. And so the key to growing your business is not to try to develop a power base and then go after somebody who's doing a pretty good job in their area. Go try to go into somebody where you can really leapfrog what people are doing today. So then you're not becoming competitive to them, you're next-genning them.
Yeah, it's all orientation. It's picking your orientation in the space. Yeah, that's brilliant.
The beauty about business is
a really valuable lesson for everybody who's watching today when they're first starting out to try and build, focus on their top niche, and then look for every opportunity you can. Yeah.
There's a great expression that says you kill where you hunt. And the key to being a successful killer is you got to choose the right grounds. And I've seen so many entrepreneurs that let the animal decide where they go hunt. And somebody comes in with a project and they take it. And then somebody comes in with another project that has no relationship to the first one, and they chase it. And all of a sudden, they're doing 5 projects with no leverageability, and they're getting no real core competence. And the discipline to pick a strategy and follow it with flexibility. I mean, if the next great idea comes in, you may want to abandon what you're doing and go do something new. So I'm not against changing strategies, but be conscious about it. Don't just take just don't take everything that comes along. They always say that the fish that chases everything that sparkles dies.
Yeah. You talked about in the dot-com era some of the destructive power of high capex values, a lot of money floating around, allowing people to buy market share and destroy market value. How do you feel? Because there's a potential in a lot, even software as a service itself has that disruptive power to an extent of ripping value, so 100% of a market is now 20% of the value before, or finding a completely different business model that, for instance, if securing smartphones suddenly became something that was provided as a free service value add-on because they found another business model that paid for it from another side. So you're constantly looking at, is it the dynamics of the change? How do you feel about some of the big moves with some of the cloud services that do rip end user fees out of the market to find another business model to pay for it?
Hey, we're thinking every day about that, and this is where you have to outdo it to be competitive, and you've got to think about competitive differentiation and defendability, and so the idea that I can give everything away for free, somewhere you've got to start making some money, and so God bless Google, and they've said, look, I can give you the cell phone operating system because I can make it up on advertising. I'm just not sure that there's a lot of enterprise software that you give away for free and make up somewhere else. But listen, I'm not going to tell you we're not thinking about it every day.
I mean, the entire Salesforce.com thing of $5 a seat compared to what you were paying with software as before software as a service. I mean, the customer resource planning software per seat, the differentials are huge. Totally.
Well, I don't know where you're buying Salesforce.com from, but we're paying more than $5 a seat. They're a pricey piece of software, and they clearly bring value because we pay the bill. And they know how to have, it's the old saying of freemium. You've got some market segments that you may have to give away and others that you don't. But we've all got, at the end of the day, we've all got to find a way to make a living. And my belief is that this area is so ever-changing, and the R&D and the cost of development are horrendous. I didn't want to go from 100 to 500 employees in the last 12 months and move to 1,000 in the next 12 months. I have to do it to keep up. And so anybody else that wants to hire 1,000 people over the next couple of years to give a product away, God bless them. And secondly, nobody wants to have their security done by the 37th best security firm in the world. This is one that boils down to a few global, big, important players that are credible. And the other thing is, it's not going to be one of the hardware or operating system people. It's got to be done by Switzerland. So BlackBerry saying they're going to manage iPhones is a difficult position, or Google saying we're going to give it away and manage Apple devices just as well as we do Android devices or Windows Phone. People see through a little bit of that, and they want a neutral player who really will work with all of these devices well.
That's going to be my takeaway to that slogan, is it's got to be done by Switzerland. I'm going to take that one away.
Well, that leads into my next question, which is one of the other impressive facts about Airwatch, is that in an industry where the norm is venture capital and big firms investing in technology companies, it's a little secret that you guys will be able to do it with no outside funding. How does a company like Airwatch first scale, B, keep a war chest, and keeps going strong, doubling the workforce every 12 months with no outside funding?
Well, I built Manhattan Associates with no outside capital, and we went from 30 to 800 employees in 3 years profitably. And I think that speaks to good execution. You don't need to just spend a lot of money to get things done. You can actually have a good product with a good value proposition that's priced right, and if you sell enough of it, you're going to be able to scale. And so our prices are half of what our competitors are.
Yes.
We have used way less capital than any of them to build the business, and we're more than twice the size in headcount of our largest competitor, the number 2 player. And so I think it speaks to great execution, a product people want that's priced appropriately, and a workforce that really wants to go out, and we treat nickels like manhole covers. We do it for our customers. I think it just shows good execution on the company. I've done it once. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have a war chest. I mean, Manhattan's got $1 billion market cap. So like I said, I own 60% of that when I took it public. You can do some of the math. We're very well funded. That said, I don't need to blow all that in one company, and I'm not. We are using far less capital than any of our competitors. And again, I just think it speaks to the fact that we designed the right product, customers want it, and we're selling a lot more of it than any of the other players in the market.
I think Carl just made a good point. It's like good execution is an understatement with kind of impressive numbers.
I'd be scared to death if I was one of our competitors.
Yeah, that kind of scaling is phenomenal.
I would be scared if I were RIM because, Apple and Android attacking them on the hardware side, and you guys are not a competitor to RIM, but you're enabling other platforms to be a competitor to RIM where they are the strongest, which is enterprise email, communication, and security.
RIM, God bless them, but they fell asleep for a couple years, and a couple really critical years, and the world snuck up on them. I think people were saying to them, you need a better browser, you need a better user interface, you need something that's more appreciated by your user, and they thought that they just had a lock. It's the old, only the paranoid survive, and don't believe your own BS. Mm-hmm. I think that they let themselves get a little insulated. So we didn't cause what's happening at RIM. We may be enabling the speed to adoption by the enterprise of the devices that consumers want to carry, but we didn't quote unquote do anything to RIM. They did it to themselves.
Correct.
And what's really going to happen is that mobility and technology, I keep saying it wants to be a monopoly. It wants economies of scale. And the numbers of devices that the Android manufacturers and that iOS is delivering by comparison to RIM, it's growing at such a pace that RIM will just get lost on the wayside. And I always say that the side of the road is littered with technology companies that didn't scale and market. And RIM is starting to lose the economy of scale battle to where they just won't have the horsepower to develop the software that people want or to deliver the hardware that people want. Once you become a niche player, there's a card game called Feudal Wars where the winner of the previous game has the advantage in the next one. And that's what happens in technology. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And I think RIM is just starting to become irrelevant.
Well, I kind of like to congratulate you on your success and your future success, because I think one of the key to your future success is similar to what you said, which is you kill where you kill where you hunt, and of course the other saying is that you don't crap where you eat. Yeah. and I think you said that well when you talk about who are your partners and where's the niche and how you would succeed going forward. And I think my observation listening to you is that your future success is going to be hinged on the fact that you have latched on to a very important trend, which is that our professional life and our personal life are merging. It's very difficult to say, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, I belong to the company, but by 5, I'm my own. It is very difficult to do that now. So as a result of that, we can't just have one phone that is issued to us by our employer. The days of the RIMs where they monopolize that market is gone, right? Because given the choice, we would like to have either iPhone or Android. And somehow, because at the same time, our professional life and our personal life are merging, we all want to have a say as to what phone we want to carry. So that heterogeneous environment that you talked about is the trend. And because you understand that, that's going to be your future success.
Well, I have a question about your the future of mobile that I want to get your thoughts on. And this is sort of a out there question that no one knows the answer to. But Google's glasses, what do you think of them?
Hey, I think they're great. I don't, ever since Dick Tracy went to his watch and could talk, we knew that there was going to be a cell phone. It was a matter of who could really get the technology. So I go back to that expression. Good ideas are hard and executing them is even harder. We all know that we're going to have much more mobile computing. We're going to have computing built into our clothes. It's going to monitor our health. We're going to have computers in our glasses that are going to tell us where to go. They're in our cars. They're going to be in our windshield to tell us where to drive. They're going to be in our bumper to tell us when to slow down. They're going to be in your heart when you've got a heart problem, and it's going to tell your doctor what's going on so that we can, it's going to be monitoring your blood sugars if you're a diabetic. So putting computers and glasses and you know, it's going to ultimately maybe be a contact lens, so I don't even have to put the glasses on, and it's going to be a chip in the back of your head, because right now I'm always pulling out my phone when I can't remember someone's name and Googling or looking up a keyword or trying to remember who their kids' names were. You know, I want that embedded in the back of my head, man. I don't want to have to pull out my phone to look that up.
I think I'm about to start making tinfoil hats, actually. I'm not sure about the chip in the head thing.
So how long before we see Airwatch MDM on those devices? Are you guys looking
right.
at
Well, we monitor a lot of health equipment. We work for a company, Home Care Home Base, that's got 50,000 home health care nurses in the field. And we make sure their mobility works, and it's mission critical. But the answer is that we do a lot of machine-to-machine readable interfaces already. We monitor printers and batteries and carts on wheels and devices that are used in healthcare. So the answer is we're right there.
Okay, I need to do better research then.
Can I ask just in relation to people using their own devices and feeling comfortable with their own devices? What do you do to make people feel that they're not being over-monitored when it is their personal information and their personal connections? Because obviously the company needs them to be able to lock down a device, but the individual might be concerned as they come into an organization and says, hey, we've got this monitoring software we're going to put on your phone that you've brought in with you. How do you make them feel comfortable around that, and what protections does the person get themselves?
Well, you know, let's start with the fact that even with Google and Apple and this thing that happened several months ago where they were, you know, tracking GPS locations, all that, let's be really honest. AT&T has known where we've been for a long time. This was not an epiphany that nobody knew where your cell phone was. And so I think the bigger fear is, what are people going to do with this information? And, you know, we allow a company to track certain devices certain ways and other devices other ways, and have an ability to capture certain information or not capture it. And we give them the ability to put a waiver, an instruction sheet that says, these are the rules of engagement. This is what I do and this is what I don't do. And so something like we may be able to and may need to be able to see all the applications that are on a device just to make sure there's nothing really dangerous. But we would never show that information to a help desk worker, because you would never want him to know that somebody's got an epilepsy app or a learning disability app or a child diabetes app and learn something personal. This is really important, and we worked with Coca-Cola, and they checked our software out from a PII, privacy perspective, globally, because what you can do in France versus what you do in Germany, and what's legal in the UK and what's legal in China is all different. And this is where software like MDM, it all looks the same from the brochureware. But I always say, when you look out the window of a plane at 30,000 feet, Boston looks a lot like Bombay. But when you get down on the ground, you can tell they're very different places.
Yeah.
This is, you know, the building of the software in a way that we can protect employees. We can track a corporate device a little different than a BYOD device, a little different than a Windows mobile device that a delivery driver might be using when he's only on the job and in the corporate truck. I've got to be able to do those things differently. Yeah. And this is the power of MDM when it's coming from a sophisticated vendor that understands that different devices are being used in different ways by different constituents, and that you've got to be able to handle everything from, again, that delivery driver to, we work in education where we are very light in the management of a student. You know, they might want to put a content locker down because I've got to send e-books that I don't want cut and pasted, or I don't want 50 copies made for the other 49 students in the class. But at the same time, and I may want you to have a password on the device because you're getting certain resources, but outside of a password and not copying books, I want you to be able to do everything with no tracking or management whatsoever.
Yeah.
On the other hand, that may be the student.
Platform,
yeah, and then the faculty may be a little more tightly managed, and the administrators a little more tightly managed, and the actual president of the university may be very tightly managed because, you know, he's got very confidential financial information, things like that, but he knows that, and he's taking the responsibility, but knows that he's being very tightly managed.
It's knowledge. So if somebody knows, they can always. Do organizations tend to stop people from having an independent device that's their own, just in case that they use it but ask them for a call?
Many times they do. We work in the investment banking community where very often they're not allowed to do personal business on it. We work for a $15 billion private equity firm, and they'll say, look, we've only got 200 employees, but every email has a term sheet and can be a $50 million lawsuit. You know, they're a little bit more restrictive on what they allow people to do. So the answer is that there is no one answer. And
so having the adaptable, extensible platform is fantastic. That's brilliant.
It's got to morph to what the needs are.
Excellent. Hey, well, guys, our hour time is up, and I would love to have Alan back another time in a couple months to like hear about what's going on next and see everything else. But I'm going to let him go for today. Thank you so much for coming on, Alan. This was one of the most exciting and interesting conversations I've had on here in a long time.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to have been here. This hour went by. I thought when this was scheduled for an hour, I said, what the heck am I going to say for an hour? And this has actually been one of the most enjoyable hours I've had as well. So I appreciate it.
Hey, Carl, if I could just make one more comment.
Sure.
I think Alan is a very, very good teacher. I mean, I learn a lot, and then I'm sure later on when other people see this on YouTube, they will learn a lot. I wonder if would there ever be a time when this hangout, that forum that we have, where we would invite, for example, just a first-time entrepreneur who just wanted to have a chance to kind of run through ideas and learn from more experienced people. I think that would be a really good forum to invite Alan back if he has time for that. Yeah. Because he has so much experience. He knows what's important, what's not important. That could be very, very beneficial too.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk. Sometime.
We'll continue to talk to your
for sure.
To your PR department.
I think that's a great idea, though.
I wanted to say thank you for Nicole Bigley for making this possible. I know that she's no longer with Airwatch, but we do appreciate her facilitating this hangout, and we really do appreciate you coming and having this hour with us. I think Airwatch is a great company, and we'll continue to watch it closely.
Great. Well, thank you guys, and have a great weekend.
All right, everyone. Have a good weekend.